Philosophical Mysticism Simplified, Individuation 1, the Persona and Ego Consciousness. So this is part one of 3 parts on the topic of individuation. So this is part 1, and we're going to be looking at the persona and the ego consciousness. So looking at individuation in the sort of Jungian sense, we're going to be really talking about how do you become who you truly are? How do you sort of recover your full self from your unconscious or all the things that are influencing who you take yourself to be? So really, famous quote from Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So a lot of people, will sort of make decisions, live their lives in a certain way without really being aware of all the things sort of going on in the background. And really what we want to do here in terms of looking at individuation, we want to sort of try to bring things that are hidden in the background to the surface. And we could ask this question, in terms of how to guide your life. What should we trust if not God or reason? In previous videos, philosophical mysticism talks about, we probably shouldn't trust God and we probably shouldn't trust reason. So if you can't trust God or reason in terms of, who you are, what should you trust instead? Well, you might say, you could trust yourself, but that's, if only it was that simple. And the problem is that much of what you are is foreign to you. Much of who you are, what you think you are, is foreign, even though it doesn't seem that way. So in order to make yourself truly known to yourself, you must ultimately integrate the unconscious with the conscious in the sort of Jungian sense of individuation. And it's unavoidable. In order to, grow spiritually as a person, in order to become whole, at some point you have to integrate the unconscious with the conscious. Otherwise you become sort of the unconscious influences you without you even being aware of it. And it's going to really be pulling the strings rather than you. So if you really want to sort of grow here spiritually, at some point you're going to have to integrate the unconscious with the conscious. And Jung gives the process of individuation, which we're going to be talking about, and that's one way in order to bring this about. So I will say in philosophical mysticism, it's going to offer a more streamlined and expanded version of what Jung does. So in philosophical mysticism, this process of individuation is much more streamlined, and also is going to be expanded above what Jung offers. It might be better be called actualization. So if you want to sort of distinguish what Jung is doing in the individuation from how philosophical mysticism is using individuation, the distinction might be the difference between Jungian individuation versus actualization in philosophical mysticism. So there's a distinction you could make here. But I will say I'm, in terms of these 3 videos, part 1, part 2, part 3, I'm strongly drawing on Jung here. I'm strongly drawn on Jung's process of individuation in terms of how to integrate the unconscious with the conscious. All right, so the first step 1, again, like I said, this is much streamlined, it's reordered, it's a little different than what Jung does in his process, but I think it's probably the better way to go. And this is, in terms of the actual step, this is how I'm ordering it, and it's more like I said, it's more actualization if you want to make the distinction. But the first step, in terms of starting this process, of course, I think the first step you should sort of look at, or the first thing you should look at, is the persona. And this is the sort of first Jungian aspect that we're going to look at. In the persona, what is the persona? Well, the persona is the social mask we wear. It's an artificial personality that we share with the world. And if you're trying to get started with this process, this is the easiest thing to sort of sort out. This is the easiest step in this process, is sort of making sense and dealing with the persona. And again, like I said, it's a mask. It's a social mask that we wear. And there are many masks we wear rather than once. We wear multiple masks. Some more artificial than others. In order in the process of individuation, we need to shed these masks, all of your masks. You need to shed them in this process. You have to be bare in order to really like get at, who you truly are, in order to get deep into your psyche. Of course, we can rebuild our mask later on after we're done. That's fine. But at least in this process of individuation, you have to shed all your mask. Why is this important? Because the reason this is important is because these masks, these sort of social masks that we wear, if we wear a social mask, let's say it's like from your job, your profession, whatever, or your social group, the mask can remove the need for growth. By wearing these masks, it sort of removes the need for growth. It can sort of stunt your growth. And many people are comfortable with adopting ready-made masks as substitutes for their personality. Many people do this. Like I said, your profession is probably the easiest thing to point to. You sort of take on the profession of a doctor. You take on the mask of a doctor, the personality of a doctor, what a doctor should be. And this, it is true that this is a type of personality. If you want to put on these artificial masks, it is a type of personality, but it's a very shallow type of personality, or it's a very shallow thing to sort of be, if that's how you're presenting yourself to the world. So we have to be cautious of this, and at least during the process of individuation, you do need to shed all your mask. So how do you, or your artificial personalities that you share with the world? So how do you shed your mask? How do we shed our mask? Ideally, you could appeal to friends for help. That's probably the best way to go about doing this. Friends can usually dismantle many of your masks. And like I said, you have many, many masks. And friends could usually easily dismantle many of your masks because they know you. They see you as you are. And your friends, if you sort of ask them to help you out, they could dismantle many of your masks, even if you're actually yourself unaware of the severity of these masks or their existence at all. So your friends could actually see masks that you might not even be aware of. The mask you share with your friends, you are going to have a mask that you share with your friends as well. So even with your friends, you still put on a mask. It's a more personal mask, but it's still a mask nonetheless, versus your true self. The sort of mask that you share with your friends is much harder to dispose of, but it's possible. You could do it. And it's going to require brutal honesty and candor, and should be reserved for those closest to you. So if you're trying to shed this deeper mask that you share with your friends, you're probably you should probably only do this with your close friends, because they're going to see a part of you that might not be very admirable or desirable or agreeable. So if you are going to do this, if you're going to take this seriously, you should probably reserve this for close friends, really close friends, not just people that you kind of know. And this is the way to sort of get rid of these even more personal masks that you have, this deeper mask that you share with your friends. But if you're thorough about this and you're brutally honest, you can actually shed this mask as well. So it's possible to. You have to do this at some point. If let's say you don't have any close friends, or you don't want to take that risk or be vulnerable, you could use a psychotherapist. That could work as well. But it's going to be much harder, because you're putting on a mask for the therapist as well. The mask you show to the therapist is also an artificial mask. So it might not be it's going to be a lot more difficult if you do this through a psychotherapist. You could do it. You could go this route though. But ideally, if you have close friends, this is the best way to do it, because they know you the best. They know you way better than your therapist knows you, for sure. Even if you tell the therapist a bunch of information that they might not know. So ideally, appeal to friends to shed your sort of the deeper mask that you have. But if not, a psychotherapist could work if you're just trying to get this process of individuation going. Also, a person may also have some exotic masks or masks used in private reflection or fantasy. And we all have or sort of these exotic masks as well that we usually hide from other people. These masks will also need to be shed. So you have to even shed your exotic masks that you sort of use in private or in fantasy. You got to shed these masks as well, at least while pursuing the process of individuation. So in order to like be genuine here, in order to actually get this going, this is a good reason why you should start here. It's like a sort of litmus test in terms of like whether you're serious about following individuation or not. You need to strip yourself bare. You got to get rid of all the masks, strip yourself bare to where only your face is showing, your true face. And this makes you vulnerable, but this is the way you got to go in terms of this first step. And it's something that you should do. Again, like I said, you could rebuild your mask later. You could rebuild all your masks after the process. But while you're undergoing this process of individuation, actualization, you got to shed every single mask that you have, or at least that you're aware of. All right. The second aspect, Jungian aspect, is the ego consciousness. Really important here, don't confuse this with Freud's ego or Freud's superego. It's different, it's not the same thing. So don't sort of get this confused with what Freud says. And also, I'm using a little bit different terminology that Jung uses, just to make it easier to sort of differentiate this from Freud. So I'm using the word ego consciousness. So it's a little different here. Definitely, again, don't confuse this with Freud, his ego and superego, and so on. And for the ego consciousness, instead of a mask, this is more like a mirror. So your ego consciousness is more like a mirror. It's how you see yourself or would like to see yourself. So it's not a mask here. We're not looking at a mask. We're looking at a mirror. And usually, like when looking at this mirror, the ego consciousness, this reflection, it's going to include things that you take to be positive or acceptable. But in many cases, what people see in the mirror is distorted and not an accurate representation of who they really are in terms of how they see themselves. People will often inflate their personal image of themselves. Most people do this. They inflate their personal image. This can lead to narcissism and megalomania. Similarly, creating some unrealistic ideal that does not match what's actually possible could lead to frustration and dissatisfaction. So when you sort of inflate yourself in your mind and it's not actually possible to achieve, you're just going to be frustrated because it's not realistic. You shouldn't do this. There's also the other end where people see themselves negatively and worse than they really are. And this is also destructive. So you shouldn't see yourself negatively either, unnecessarily. And this is going to also be a destructive thing to do. So you shouldn't inflate yourself. You shouldn't degrade yourself either. In following the path of individuation, we must accurately capture our personal image in a way that coheres to objective reality. So we have to represent ourselves in our minds in a way that coheres to objective reality. In doing so, we must disband the ideal self, or some conception of a future ideal self, and grasp the conscious self in the present as it currently is unadulterated. And this is a problem that many people have. Like the way they see themselves is like some future better version that they'll become. Like the person they'll become, that's who they really are. That's how they see themselves. That's problematic because that's not you. It's an ideal. It's a fantasy. You shouldn't see yourself that way. You shouldn't see yourself as some, future ideal. That's not you. who you are is what you are right now. What you actually are in the present, unadulterated. That's who you are. You get to see yourself as such. When you sort of like keep sort of like punting the self into the future, like, oh, I'm going to become a better person that in the future at some point, and that's who I truly am. That's my true self. That's not a correct way to go about doing this in terms of individuation. That's not who you are. That's some fantasy that you created in your mind. That's not to say though that we can't create some new, better conscious self later on. That's fine. I mean, yeah, you should strive to be better. So there's nothing to stop you or nothing to say that you shouldn't create some new, better self later on or strive to do so. But we just have to be clear here, that's not you. This fantasy future self that you have, this future ideal self is not you. We have to come to grips with this and see ourselves as we truly are in the present, as you currently are. And sort of like going off this, this is going to require some humility and self-love. Especially if you aspire to some future ideal, you might not like who you currently are. You're living in the future. You're like, I'm judging myself in the future rather than the present because I don't like my current self. That's something you shouldn't do. You need to be humble here. You need to have some self-love and accept who you are right now in the present. And sometimes what you may find may not be satisfying. You might not like what you find. It might be boring. But this should not be a major hurdle. Because the ego consciousness is only a part of who you are, or part of what you are. The complete self is much bigger and likely more interesting. So at this second step of individuation, don't be discouraged. Like if you find that you find yourself, your actual objective self, and you don't like it, it's boring. Don't be frustrated. Don't give up here, because this is only the second step. When you finish this process of individuation, you'll find the sort of complete self, and I guarantee you it's going to be interesting. Everybody's complete self. They actually do discover who they truly are. They do find themselves as they truly are. It's going to be pretty interesting. If you actually can find your complete self, become your complete self, it'll actually be pretty interesting. If you take it like holistically as a whole, you'll actually find something that's unique and interesting and desirable. But in order to get there, in order to get to that point where you have this sort of interesting full self, you got to go through the steps. And you got to go through the second step of matching your perception of yourself with objective reality. And in this step, you might find out that you're kind of boring, uninteresting. That's okay. Like I said, keep going because you will find something else much better. But you got to go through each of these steps in order. It's just part of the process. And not most people, at least some people are going to find their true self or their objective, or their sort of perception matched and objective reality might not be something that you like. And that's okay though. Just keep going and you'll be fine. So this is part 1, individuation part 1 of 3. In the next video, I'll go into the part 2, and we'll talk about the next steps after that. All right.